Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk series. Today we will be discussing one of our applications called the SSL Inspector, and our Director of QA, John Coffin, will be going through that application and how to set it up correctly and how it works well with other apps. My name is Shannon Miles. I'm part of the product marketing team here, and I'm your host today. As I mentioned, John will be taking over the demonstration in a little bit. So if we go to the next slide, please, John. Thank you so much. So just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please be sure to use the audio panel on the right-hand side to select your preference. If you do select to use a phone, you will need to dial in and provide the access code. Just a reminder, we get a lot of this question all the time. Yes, this webinar is recorded, so you will have the option to rewatch or revisit areas later on that you want to follow up on. And we also have our handy team of engineers and sales team on the call as well to answer questions. So please just submit them through the Q&A box. I know this topic will probably get a good amount of questions, so we'll try and get to them as much as possible. But if we don't end up getting to them, as always, you can send questions to sales or support@untangle.com, as well as visit our forums. Now, before I pass it on to John, just want to reiterate, this is a very highly technical webinar. So if you're not familiar with Untangle, our solutions, or networking concepts, this probably isn't the right webinar for you. We do have a Untangle 101 webinar series that is more high-level topics, and you can find a full listing of our webinars on our website. All right, John, go ahead. Take it away.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks for joining us. This will probably go a little bit quick for people. SSL Inspector is probably one of the most complex to implement apps that we have. So please bear with us, and we'll try to get to your questions. Again, all the engineers are pretty much on the forum, so if you have specific questions to your layout and your network, please post on the forums. We'll be more than glad to get an answer to you very quickly. So let's go quickly. SSL Inspector, what does it do? So in general, more and more traffic is becoming encrypted between the user's computer and the website, the mail server, or whatever, due to a lot of reasons. Hacking, people listening in, also to keep your email and browsing private. That presents kind of a problem once you get inside the network. So you want to have some insight into that, because you might have rules or policies on what kind of traffic can go through your network. So you have to kind of do a couple things. So we need to look inside the encrypted traffic that's coming across your firewall. We do this with the SSL Inspector. It will de-encrypt the HTTPS traffic, and starting with version 12, we do unencrypt SMTP traffic also. It's not absolutely necessary that you use SSL Inspector to inspect websites, for example, because there is something called SNI, which tells you in the clear what domain this particular set of traffic is going to. It's not used by all browsers. Some browsers don't provide that information, so in that case you won't have any insight. But it doesn't also tell you like what level of that website is going in. For example, like for Facebook, you don't know if the person is on a particular game in Facebook, or he's just looking at the company website that's on Facebook. So SSL Inspector does provide a lot better granularity to control the network. One of the requirements of SSL Inspector is that you have administrative control over the devices behind the firewall. It requires that we install a certificate, so either the user must install a certificate from the Untangle firewall, and each one is unique for the installation, or you need to be able to access that machine either directly or through, if you have a Microsoft domain controller, you can do that through group policies and install it just through your domain controller. So we'll go into it right now. So what does the SSL Inspector do? So as you can see here, if a client is communicating with a website, for example, it will develop an encryption between it. So as it's going through the Untangle, it will only see the encrypted traffic and not know exactly what's going. It will most likely know what domain it's going to, but other than that, it will not know anything else. With SSL Inspector, what we do is we act like a go-between the computer and the encrypted website. So we'll initiate the communication with the website and say, hey, let's have an encrypted key exchange. So we'll exchange keys with us so our communication is encrypted. And then with the client, what we'll do is say, hey, we're going to give you a special key to communicate with this website, and you need to use it for encrypted traffic. So it does that, but we actually have the key also. So we can unencrypt the traffic and inspect it before it actually goes through them. And that's the gist of it. We're actually passing a unique certificate from the Untangle to the client so we can actually unencrypt it and then re-encrypt it and send it back to the client. So that's kind of the general of it. There are some exceptions. There are apps that have a hard-coded certificate. One of them is, for example, is Dropbox. Dropbox will only communicate with a specific certificate, and if it doesn't see that, it just does not start the session. So in those cases, for Dropbox, you cannot inspect the traffic going across the firewall. And we'll go over some of the techniques to overcome these limitations. Inspecting SSL traffic. So let me kind of demonstrate how this is on an Untangle. So you have your Untangle here. You'll go to your apps, and you'll go ahead and install SSL Inspector. It's not here in the list because I already have it installed, but you can just click it, you're done. So here's a real short example. We have a web filter, which most of you are pretty familiar with. Obviously, when we go to encrypted traffic, we won't see anything per se. Some of the things that you can see, for example, we'll take a look at some events. And let me generate a quick event here. Let me go to Facebook on a machine I have behind it. And so even though the traffic is encrypted, I do know what domain it is, but I don't know any of the URL over it. So what I'll do is just go ahead and go to that. I have a machine behind it. Sorry, a little bit of okay. So I went ahead and logged in, but as you can see, I know nothing about where I went or what I'm doing in that site because it doesn't have any information on that. So there's a couple things I have to do. First of all is I have to enable SSL Inspector. It's off by default. What I recommend if you're rolling the certificates out to the clients manually is you build a second rack and have one that's for the unfiltered traffic and one for the filtered. And you can direct the traffic based on if they have the SSL Inspector or not. But I'll go ahead and turn it on. And when you enable it, it generates two things. It generates its own certificate to give out to clients that's unique for this particular instance. And then it also develops an installer. so I can install the certificate on the different machines. You can either download the installer, which is an exe, and then this will install it in all the places required for the SSL inspector. There's two places. One is the Windows directory. For the Windows directory, it needs to be a specific certificate for installation, and I can show you how to install that manually. Or and also, if you're using Firefox, Firefox doesn't use the standard Windows certificate store. It uses its own, so you have to install it separately for Firefox. This installer does it both for you, so it handles all the cases for you and it makes it much easier. So what I'll do is I'll have my, so here's my Windows client that's behind my Untangle. As you can see, I'm blocking most of the HTTPS, so the full web page doesn't look up. So what I'm going to do is go ahead, and I have two ways to do it. I can go ahead and download the installer, which I just showed you. There's another way too. You can actually tell, so you don't have to give people to log into your firewall. You can actually have them just go to the firewall IP address and then cert. This in turn will go ahead and install it on the browser for you. So I'll go ahead and select the first one. I'm going to trust going to websites. And then what I need to do is restart my browser. So I'll go to the browser again. So now I've trusted the Untangle certificate. So now if I go to Facebook, now I don't get a certificate error, even though I'm using SSL Inspector, because if we inspect the certificate for this, we'll notice that it's an Untangle certificate. So how could that be? So what's happening is the Untangle, you've generated a unique certificate for your Untangle that is passed out to the clients. The clients will accept this for any website and allow it to communicate with that other website, yet you have insight to their traffic. So it's kind of a unique way of enabling those areas. So you can go ahead and sign in and you'll get all the information from what they're browsing on your report. So if we go here to reports, go look at all sessions. And we can see all the traffic that's gone through here. So we can actually get down to very much detail on what the actual domain is. Like, you know, this is the individual tracking pics that they put in there. You can see the full inspection on there. When you see abandoned, that means it didn't understand the way the SSL traffic. Some people try to do things outside the requirements of the certificate, and those are not accepted by Untangle. So we kind of block those, so they're not. If there's some kind of odd thing going on with certificates, we kind of block that because it's probably not a good issue for it. So that's really the basics about how getting the inspection in. There's some other, then you can configure your rules out. Really, this is the standard traffic. As you see, I have Facebook into inspect Facebook. I do ignore Dropbox by default. You can select inspect all traffic. It becomes a little bit tedious because initially you're going to find some apps that have hard-coded certificates. There are a few, which is kind of hard to deal with. For example, Dropbox. The best way to do with Dropbox is just ignore the traffic that's going through there. It will just ignore that specific certificate. And some of the, so if we go back to our configuration, as you can see, we're also processing HTTPS traffic. So any kind of, if I have a mail server behind there, what I'll do if I have TLS services, I can go ahead and accept those on my firewall and then pass it on to my mail server while still blocking spam. So I'll inspect the email, check it for spam, drop the email if it's spam or mark it depending on my requirements, and then re-encrypt it and send it on to my browser. And that, of course, means that you need to have the spam blocker and phishing blocker to do SMTP. These two will also work with SSL Inspector, as they will inspect the SSL SMTP traffic. There's a couple of options that you have to do on that, and excuse me. So by default, almost all the protocols are selected. You may want to limit this. For example, SSL2 and SSL3 are being phased out as they're being compromised, so you may want to uncheck that if you're looking to kind of lock down your security on there. Let me go really back to SSL certificates. So that's a way, if you have access to the machine, there's two ways. You can do the installer for SSL certificates, or you can have them go to that special URL and just install it. There's one other way. Go ahead.
We have just some questions that are popping up, so figure since you're still on this, we go over some.
Okay.
There's one, how do you set up the rule in Untangle to route people that have this certificate installed to use the new SSL Inspector rack?
Yeah, so the best way to do that is just with the policy manager. And let me just install that real quick. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You create a separate rack. So we can do this. Let's create a rack here. And let's call it SSL rack. And we're going to make the parent the default. And so if we look at the racks now, what we'll do is uninstall this. So we'll go to our SSL rack, which is a child of the original rack, so it has all the apps from the original one. And then we go ahead and install SSL Inspector. And generally what I've done to differentiate the traffic is I'll create a rule, and I'll either do a specific addresses for that area, for that particular that I know have SSL Inspector, the certificate for SSL Inspector installed, or I can do ranges because I know I'll do a set of ranges. You can't really differentiate if they have the certificate installed. You can. There is another way to do it. It's a little more complicated. Let me just put this in real quick for you. And this is So this is, and then we'll say we want all these people to go through the SSL rack. By the way, the best way to find out what's going on with the machine is use Session Viewer. So let me do a refresh on that. And see, now we're going through the SSL rack. Another way to do this, also to direct traffic, is with Captive Portal. So with Captive Portal, and this is the other way to install it, it's not as clean, but it does work, especially if you want to try to do this in a bring your own device kind of atmosphere. So what you can do is say, I want to do a Captive Portal, and I want to check for certificate. So I either can check for it and then direct them to the SSL rack, or I can go ahead and make that a requirement where they need to download it, or I won't let them in. And that's one way to do it. It's a little heavy-handed, but it does work. So let me go ahead and apply this, and I can show you how this works. So let me take out the rule that's redirecting my traffic. So what I can do is change the rules to say if the traffic is, let's see, so let me take out this rule. I'll just disable it. So what I can do now is go ahead and try to go to Facebook again. I must not have enabled it. Capture rules. It's the simple switches that make it hard. So let me go ahead and close this and reopen it. So now I get my Captive Portal. So on here it says, oh, you don't have the root certificate installed in your computer. You must install it. So I'll go ahead. So you can manually install it. Oh, it says already installed. So I can download the Windows installer and go ahead and install that on my machine. And once I install that, I can go ahead and use the system because it won't let me continue. And now I have the SSL Inspector installed. And that's one way to force people to go through that. And let me see here. Let's try with a different browser because this browser won't have SSL Inspector installed. So let's go ahead and install the root certificate. And we want to install it. And we want to install it on root certificate. And now we installed it. It's probably cached in there. Let me restart that. This machine's gone through a few things. So let me try that again. So now we can continue and go to Facebook. And if we look at the certificate, Oh, that's right. I don't have it on that rack. Sorry about that. Let me install that real quick. Make sure. Oh, it's probably not on. It's all these little settings that kind of catch you.
Hey, John, there seems to be some questions on how to install this for Mac and iOS, since what you're showing us seems to be all for Windows boxes. Do you have any uh, help for that?
Yeah, we definitely do. We have a step-by-step on the wiki on how to do that on the Mac. Really, it's the same way. You manually download the certificate, and you can do that. So if you just go to the box, sorry. So let's pretend this is a Mac. We just go to, why is that not? Oh, here. So now I have the certificate down here. It's downloaded automatically. So what I'll do is the Mac will handle it. You just open that particular certificate, and the Mac will actually walk you through installing that. If you're trying to do that, you can do that on Android also. There's specific steps for doing that on, for example, on iPhone for iOS. So you have to kind of walk through a different set of steps. But for Mac, pretty much download the certificate and just open it, and you'll be able to, the Mac will help you install that directly on the operating system. So it's pretty much the same, except you won't have the exe installer. And that's really a Windows thing, because unfortunately Firefox does not use the Windows directory, Windows certificate storage. So that makes it a little more difficult on the Windows side. But on the Mac, actually Firefox uses the Mac certificate storage set. So it's pretty straightforward. Let me just go over a couple questions here. One that says, the latest updates seem to block, delay a lot of inbound, and turning off SSL inspection, clear the bottleneck. I mean, there is an overhead on it because we do have to generate a specific certificate for that website for that user. So there is some horsepower involved in generating those certificates. So you know, if your machine is pretty high on CPU usage, you may look at updating your hardware if you're going to use SSL Inspector on several sites, or you could just limit it to what you need to do. Some of the other questions here. Yeah, so in general, by default, SSL Inspector does not block all websites. And it's actually a better way to do that, to block specific websites at a time. If you do block all, use the all traffic block, you will have to do quite a bit of hand adding of rules to basically ignore things. We've added some rules. For example, you have to create rules like this. You know, ignore go to meeting. You have to look up their SSI from the certificate and then add this as an ignore rule. A couple other questions here.
John, there seems to be one that keeps popping up about, is there an easier way to get all the certificates on devices if you have, say, an environment that has hundreds of devices?
Yeah, if you have hundreds of devices, really the best way to do it is through a Windows Domain Controller, if you have that set up. If you don't have that set up, it's Captive Portal. captive portal, and you'll just have to instruct people to accept the certificate and have it installed on their browser. There's, unfortunately, that's the tough part about SSL unencrypting. It's, there has to be a key exchange, and unfortunately, the only way you can do that key exchange is manually on the machine itself. Like I said, if you have some way of pushing out updates, it's best to use that mechanism. I believe there's a way to do that on the Macs. I'm not familiar with that way to do a global, but you can push out updates to those. Again, if you don't have some kind of overall control of all the machines, you either have to manually go to that or give instructions to users to go to a specific website, which is the IP address, the internal IP address of your Untangle /certs. This is on the wiki, by the way. And then have them install that certificate, or do a captive portal page, where that way you can easily find people who are not using the certificate, and then they have to install it to go forward. What's the expiration date? I think we have that set up pretty far in the future. It's 2023, I believe. Look at that real quick. Let's see here. Uh, 2038. So it's pretty far in the future if you ever need to do that. Let's see. How about Chrome? Yeah, Chrome. If you use the installer, it will install the certificate for Chrome. Chrome actually uses the Windows certificate storage, like Internet Explorer. Firefox is the exception. It does not use the Windows certificate storage, so that's why it has to be installed separately, or just use our installer. It will install it in both locations. For Mac, it's super easy. Just download the certificate. You don't need the installer. Just launch it. The Mac OS will help you install it, and it'll install it in one place for any of the browsers, Safari, Firefox, Chrome, whatever you can use. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there is no easy way to install certificates. I've kind of looked around many options, and there's really, I mean, the key is you're trying to unlock encrypted traffic. So if you think about it, you don't want people who don't have a control of a box to install it. So unfortunately, the only way to inspect encrypted traffic is to add your key to all these computers that are out behind the Untangle. It's just kind of one of the unfortunate things about SSL inspection. I've looked around hundreds of products, and there's just no good option for these. We try to simplify as much as we could, but again, it's a pretty high-level item to start inspecting SSL traffic. So it's not as easy as just clicking a button. One of the good things is that you do get expanded usage on Web Filter. You'll notice it's really SSL Inspector is really an enhancement for all the other apps, because they now have so much more information about the traffic going through there. You can really, I know some people who use, for example, session application control, because they have to allow so much access for example, to Facebook, but they don't allow people using the game. So in that case, you can actually view the difference between people just going to Facebook or they're going to the games on Facebook. Google Apps, you have, Google uses all their IPs for pretty much all their applications. So it's almost impossible to block, all the different apps in Google, but you still want them to use Mail, or you still want to use them to Google Maps. With SSL Inspector, you can actually see what application is being used on the Google domain, and so you can block whatever you need to. For example, if you only want them to go to your specific email, and block any like excuse me, personal email addresses, you can block those.
Hey John, there was a question about any lag time that, since this inspection, requires a deep packet inspection into the different websites, would this impact any, video conferencing or any of the bandwidth?
So it really depends. I've actually used this on YouTube to see if we could inspect that traffic. There is a slight delay at the beginning, but for example, YouTube seems to buffer it pretty well to allow for it. As you notice, we're like not blocking GoToMeeting, for example, as a default rule in there. It's probably best not to inspect those if you're looking not to block them, but you just want to inspect it. Of course, if you're looking to block one of these, streaming services, it doesn't really matter. You can go ahead and inspect it, and it doesn't matter. But there is overhead on the initial connection. So once the initial connection is made, of course, we have to unencrypt the traffic as it comes in, re-encrypt it with our key, and then send it off to the client. So there is some processing that is happening to the actual session before it goes to the user. So there is lag time involved there. From what I've seen, it's almost minimal except for really sensitive areas like high definition video. Definitely don't want to try to unencrypt that as it's going through. So like Netflix is an example of something you don't want to use SSL Inspector on. No, you don't need to purchase certificates. The certificates are actually generated by the box itself, and they're unique to that box. That's to provide privacy within your own network. Obviously, we wouldn't want to use the same certificate on the tens of thousands of untangles that are out there. So when you install SSL Inspector, it generates a very unique certificate for your network, and those machines will use that behind there. Like I said, initially it's kind of especially if you're looking at thousands of machines, it's quite daunting. But with either the installer or just using the special URL to download the cert, it makes it pretty quick to install it. I mean, we're probably talking 1 minute to install a certificate on an individual client machine. Let's see, how are we doing on time?
We probably have a few more minutes to answer some questions, or if you have anything else you wanted to show, but we'll have to wrap up pretty soon.
So some people asked about IPSec VPN traffic. So that inspection, the inspection happens at the firewall. So IPSec encryption happens at the firewall going out. So really the traffic coming to the Untangle that's going to go across the IPSec tunnel is not encrypted, and it's encrypted at the point of the firewall. So SSL Inspector will have nothing to do with that. So, you know, and of course, you know, if you're doing HTTPS traffic over an IPSec tunnel, which you have encryption on top of encryption. So once it comes out of the IPSec tunnel, you can inspect that traffic. So someone said about the certificate license count. There's really no certificate count. It's just the number of users that you have.
Hey, John, there's a question. We use Untangle as a bridge in bridge mode. There's a question if they can use SSL Inspector in that mode.
Yes, yeah, you can definitely use SSL Inspector in bridge mode. There's some oddities about that if you do. It shouldn't affect most people. It does cause some problems with VPN. So if you have VPN behind an Untangle, so if a client is using VPN to access another machine that's going across the Untangle, it may not connect on the other end. So it may block VPN that's happening on the client.
Great, thanks, John. I think we need to start wrapping up. If you could go back to the slides really quick.
So we went through these against the troubleshooting, and then
yeah. So I'm sure all of you are well aware we have a community available for you guys to post your questions and talk to our engineers and developers. We have the forum, so if we did not get to your question today or you have a very specific instance, feel free to do that, as well as send an email to support@untangle.com. We also have a wide variety of videos on our YouTube channel, not just with this application, but with all of our other applications. That, you know, if you're wanting a little bit of help to install them or get them set up correctly, those would be the best place to go. And if you're still confused or need help installing or have specialized configuration that's required, we do offer professional services. You can just email us at sales@untangle.com for that. And just want to reiterate, we've been mentioning this special offer for a few months now, but our newest appliance is the U25 and U25W, and we have a special offer going on with it. If you purchase this appliance with a subscription to our complete package, you get a free 25 device 1-year license for our Total Defense antivirus endpoints. So that's exciting. This is one of the smallest firewall appliances in the market today. Sits perfectly on your home or small office environment. And let's see, one more slide. All right, so just to wrap up, I know this was a probably quite confusing topic for many of you, so we hopefully answered most of your questions. Again, please email us or reach out to people on the forums. We also have a wiki which has a variety of documentation. And check out our next webinars. Next week we're doing an Untangle 101, Untangle at Home. In case you're not aware, we released a home license for those users who have been begging us to provide a license that they can use on their home network. So we're going to go over that in detail. Dirk Morris, our founder and CTO, is going to go through that on how to set it up and answer any of the questions that you may have in trying to protect your kids or certain network issues like that. And then we have a few new tech talks coming up in the next few months. You can register for those on our website. No, the home license is not free. You can visit our website for that information. It is much less costly than the complete package, and it is only for home use. It is not for commercial use. So I just want to reiterate that. We hope to see you again next time, and hope everyone has a great week. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, John.